Welcome to Live Happy, Eat Dirty, a podcast full of quick and dirty health and diet ideas for real people, hosted by me, Kate Harrison. Keep listening for the latest weird and wonderful ideas and interviews from the worlds of psychology, nutrition and more. If you loathe detoxes and clean eating, but love evidence-based tips and eating well, you're in the right place. Because you can be slim without giving up cheese, you can be fit without ever trying a triathlon, and you can enjoy your life without having to be a saint. Ditch the guilt. A happy, dirty life is so much more fun. Here's today's show. Hello and welcome to the very first episode of Live Happy, Eat Dirty, the new improved podcast from me, Kate Harrison. And I've expanded the podcast because I wanted to look at so much more than just intermittent fasting. That in itself has transformed my life and transformed the lives and diets of many thousands of people worldwide. But in the course of writing about diet and nutrition in the last 6 years, I've found that people want a lot more guidance on what to eat all round, not just on their fasting days, but also strategies and thoughts on healthy eating and a really sensuous and enjoyable approach to the amazing ingredients and amazing dishes that are available to us, and also the social and enjoyable side of eating as part of an all-round healthy lifestyle. So what have we got in store? Well, loads of great interviews with some fantastic people, including my dietitian colleague Helen Phadnis, who has a vast wealth of experience both in the National Health Service treating people with acute and chronic illness, but also as a private consultant helping out people who want to lose weight, who want to improve their IBS and also improve their athletic and sporting performance. She's got a really down-to-earth attitude, and during this podcast, we're going to be talking dirty together, because the other thrust of this new podcast is the idea that food should be pleasurable. It should be natural. We should be eating things that come fresh from the earth, that are dirty, and we should also be eating more germs, because we used to think all germs or all microbes were bad for us, might be pathogenic, might cause illness, but now we're aware that they play an essential part in our health, and especially eating live foods, ones we might once have seen as dirty, can really be healthy. It's because of this that I've also been writing my new book, which is about to come out. It comes out in March 22nd, 2018. So if you're listening after that date, it's already out there. And that's called The Dirty Diet. Ditch the guilt, love your food. And that's very much the philosophy of these whole podcasts coming up right now. So in a moment, I'm going to be talking to Helen about our own concerns about clean eating, because in a way, this dirty podcast is a reaction to that, and a reaction to some of the unscientific restrictions that bloggers and others seem to have been urging us to take on. I have a real problem with that, and so does Helen, because we really believe that eating diversely is a great contributor to our overall health. Last year, so that's the back end of 2017, we put a few people worldwide through their paces trying out the dirty diet. They tested it, and in most cases they were eating more than they were beforehand, but they were much more conscious of trying to eat wide, trying to put into their diets a really good range of different ingredients, different colours, different flavours, because we know that that diversity can give our bodies lots and lots of different micronutrients, the compounds and the chemicals that help our body to perform in really good ways. Before we go on to talk dirty with Helen, I'm going to actually read you a few of the things that people said after they tried out this new way of eating, this new approach. We had people who were combining the desire for weight loss with the desire for health gains as well. It's not just about the measure on the scales. We had people trying this out all over the world. So in the UK and in Europe, in the States, in Canada, in Australia and New Zealand, in Singapore, in Africa, in Dubai. And what we found was that people were able to tailor their diet to what was available locally and seasonally, and that really helped. For example, Jenny, 36, in the UK, she said she lost 12.5 pounds, 5.7 kilograms in 4 weeks, and feels over the moon with the health gain. She's sleeping better. My IBS has settled down a lot, and I've rediscovered enjoyment of food, as well as a few new favourite recipes, which I was delighted to see because I came up with those recipes. We've got Bridget, 62, also in the UK, who says, I lost 15.5 pounds, 7 kilograms after 28 days. The dirty diet's the best diet I've ever been on. It's the first diet that made sense because there's so much emphasis on me as an individual. And I will explain later, you can actually get hold of your free blueprint, which helps you identify the things you want to change and the foods that you love to eat. You can get hold of that for free by going to our Dirty Diet website, thedirty-diet.com. Quinton in South Africa, age 27, and he said, I'm 10 pounds, 4.5 kilograms down in 28 days, and I feel so much healthier. It's working better than any other diet I've tried, and it's allowed me to change my eating habits and expand on my tastes. Again, we're encouraging people to try new things. Final little quote here before we go into the interview with Helen. This is Kelly, who's 48, from Australia. She says, I lost 12.5 pounds, that's 5.7 kilograms, in 28 days. I'm proud of my achievements and feel that I can, for the first time in over 20 years, reach my goal this way. I felt so overwhelmed by all the different diets. Should I eat clean? Should I eat paleo or low carb? Now I feel liberated. I felt so good when I read some of those quotes, and there's lots more of those in the plan because it was exactly what I set out to do to begin with. I wanted to urge people to look at their diets and to celebrate what's out there and to focus on the things that they love to eat, because I know from personal experience that banning foods that you really enjoy just makes you fixated on them. It's not going to help anybody. Food is one of the pleasures in life. I hope that if you're listening to this podcast, you might share my opinion on that. Maybe you feel a bit guilty about that whole idea that eating should be pleasurable. That's another thing that we're really tackling in this podcast, because we want you to realise food and appetite is part of life. It's something that Helen very much agrees with. And now let's enjoy our first chat of the podcast series. We're going to talk dirty today with Helen Phadnis, who gave so much great advice on the dirty diet. And this time we're going to have an overview of what it is and what some of the ideas are behind it. But first of all, Helen, I'd really like to talk a bit about your background, what you did before and what you do now.
So my background is mainly within the NHS, where I worked for over 10 years as a senior specialist renal dietitian. And that was mainly in some major teaching hospitals up in London, as well as a short stint over in New Zealand for a year. During that time, I became frustrated within our short 10 or 15-minute appointment time slots. And so I started seeing patients in private clinics where I had 60 minutes and found the clinical outcomes were, and the successes from that was so much better that finally 5 years ago I left and left the NHS, went completely freelance. So I've got a couple of clinics now in Brighton and Hove where I see weight loss patients, people looking to help with their irritable bowel syndrome, performance enhancing nutrition. So a whole mixed bag, really.
So can you explain the difference for people between a dietitian, which is what you are, and a nutritionist?
Yes, so the term dietitian is a protected title. So if you see a dietitian, they will have studied nutrition and dietetics as a degree and often postgraduates, and then be trained within the medical arena, so within a hospital or perhaps in community clinics. And in addition to that, dietitians are regulated by the Healthcare Professions Council. So we have to keep up to date with all of our advice that we're giving, all of the most recent scientific research and guidelines. By contrast, a nutritionist is not a protected title. So anyone can call themselves a nutritionist. You may have studied a course. So there are so many online courses. You could pay £20 and do a weekend course in nutrition, and then you could call yourself a qualified nutritionist. But that's, you have the reassurance when you see a dietitian that there is that protected title. There would have been a degree at the very minimum and then being kept up to date. So as the British Dietetic Association call it, you can trust the dietitian, #trust the dietitian.
You're much less likely to have an agenda, I think, than some of the nutritionists that I come across seem to have a very specific take, whereas you're obligated to, as you say, take that overview and not really be biased in the direction of a particular way of eating.
Absolutely. Everyone's interested in nutrition at the moment. There's lots of nutrition noise out there, and there's huge commercial gain to be made of this. In general, people prefer black and white messages, so very simple information that's easy to understand, whereas often, if you look at all of the science, it's not so straightforward. And so dietitians have a responsibility to make sure that their messages are balanced, and that they are not making commercial gain out of it. So we don't peddle supplements and make money from that, or push particular brands.
When it comes to weight loss, what is the biggest issue that your clients are facing when they come to you?
The biggest issue is yo-yo dieting, and as part of that, over-restriction. So traditionally, people have been told they're eating too much, and then individual ingredients have then been vilified. So they've cut down. In the 80s, it was all about cutting down on fats. More recently, it's pure white and deadly, sugar needs to go. And these messages have been made very simple when, of course, diet is not simple. And people cut back and cut back and cut back, and then come and see me and say, well, what can I eat? And actually, I'm eating very little, and my weight's gone up and down, and it's just not shifting. So I think often dieting is presented in a very negative way. You need to eat less, and these are the things that you must not eat. And my approach is the opposite. I always see what is lacking in people's diets, what they need to include instead. And naturally, the junk food or the less desirable food that does lead to more calories being harvested, people eat less of and will crave less of. And in another way, focusing on boosting your metabolism or the amount of calories that you're burning rather than just limiting the amount coming in is a healthier way of looking at things. And I've had great success within my clients.
I totally agree on the confusion, and also from a different perspective. Obviously, I'm a journalist and a former yo-yo dieter. But I'm also running this great big group of people, so it's about 60,000 people now who have been trying intermittent fasting as one approach to that. And one of the things I really see in there, and it seems to coincide with this rise in the idea of clean eating, which we will talk about quite a lot, I think, is a sense of almost a moral purity if you get your diet right, or if you cut out one of these evil things. And that then leads to guilt if you fall off the wagon, as many of us will do. Do you see that as well?
Absolutely. There's been a huge increase, I'd say, within the last couple of years in clients coming through to me with huge guilt and shame over what they eat. I don't know if you're familiar with the term orthorexia. So associating every type of food or drink with either being good or bad and not being able to just relax and eat. And I would say that there are many, many people, and it's a spectrum, that have some degree of disordered eating that has been enhanced by this kind of clean eating fad. So a good test is if you have a barbecue to go to, if you're the sort of person that would worry about what you're going to eat at that barbecue, then I would say that you do have some sort of disordered eating or orthorexia, if you can't just relax when going and not having any control over the food that is on offer. Someone who I really enjoy reading is The Angry Chef, and I think he summarises the problem with the clean eating fads quite well.
Yeah, we'll include links to any books and things that we mention in the website show notes so that people can find that. And I certainly read some of his things as well. I think I'm coming from a similar perspective, and that's why I started talking about the dirty diet, partly because it was a reaction to that clean eating, and partly as a way of introducing some humanity into the whole idea of dieting, because we've all got this struggle between our appetite, which is a good thing if we respect it and try and listen to it, and the messages that we're getting. There were different things I wanted to get across with dirty, and we're going to talk through it, because overall there was the opposite of clean eating. There's also the sense that food that is quite fresh is going to potentially be ugly food. We've seen that rise in the supermarkets, haven't we, where they sell the vegetables and so on that are a bit gnarled and a bit misshapen, but why does every carrot have to be a regulation size and so on? And maybe it's quite nice if it is physically a bit dirty because it's just come from the farm gate. It's got soil and it's been grown in real earth as opposed to some kind of laboratory environment. Also with dirty, I've kind of made it, and we've talked about this a lot, so that each of the letters in dirty represents something. So I thought we'd have a chat about those. So dirty, obviously DIRTY, and the D in dirty stands for diversity in diet and why that matters. And it'd be great to hear an overview from you about why you see that as important. It certainly echoes what we've been talking about just now.
There's so much goodness and so many different types of food. So that's not just within the food groups, different types of vegetables, but also across the different food groups. I was explaining this to a group of 5-year-olds at my son's school just yesterday. We did a trip to Waitrose at the local supermarket, and we were discussing how your carbohydrates give you energy, and your meat and the fish give you the protein, and the fruits and vegetables give you all of these wonderful vitamins and minerals that help you stop getting unwell. And so on a very basic level, if you do cut out any particular food group, you're missing out on those properties. And then within the food groups as well, they will hold different properties. For instance, with fruit and vegetables, I always tell my children as well as my clients, eat a rainbow every day, and then you get all of the different types of benefits from the different colours, the different polyphenols, the different vitamins that they're giving you. So diversity is really important, and of course related to the microbiome, all the different types of, there are so many different types of bacteria that feed off different types of fibre. Diversity is what gives you a favourable microbiome. So if you think that there's these different species of microbes within your gut that are craving different types of vegetables, and the more you feed them, the more your body will crave it and the healthier you will be. So it's really important, if you're out of the habit of eating a diverse diet, that you need to understand that your body won't be craving it because you don't have those microbes yet. But the more you eat a diverse diet, the more you will crave those foods. And it's just getting over that little hump at the beginning that can be the challenge.
It's almost like educating your microbiome and your whole body to the fact that these things are nice. And I think our taste buds change as well as we embrace the dietary change. We may find that we need less sugar or less sugary sweet foods, and that we can begin to tolerate and even enjoy bitterness, say, in vegetables.
Just on the subject of taste buds, it takes our taste buds about 3 months to adjust to any change in our diet. So if you are trying to cut down on sugar or sweeteners or salt, it will take a few months just to retrain your taste buds to then appreciate your food again when it tastes differently, and for all those other flavours to come through.
We'll be touching on quite a few of these in the R and the T about training and restoring the microbiome as well, because they are all holistic. The I then in dirty is about intermittent fasting or controlling what you eat. So in my case, I've been doing the intermittent fasting, so a couple of days a week of cutting down on calories for 6 years now, and that's what's cured me of yo-yo dieting. fasting or intermittent fasting isn't for absolutely everybody, but it's a strategy, I guess, to help people become more aware of when they feel hungry as opposed to when they're bored or responding to other triggers for eating. I'd be interested in what you feel as a dietitian, because you'll work with some clients that is a good method and some that I guess it's too hard to take on.
So people are of different personalities, and some people are just all or nothing, and they really like that kind of structure and the restrictiveness of the 2 days a week. And overall, what I really like about intermittent fasting is that it does encourage diversity. You have your plenty days where there are no specific nutrients or food groups that are completely restricted. And even on your fast days, it's just the quantity of food rather than specific food groups or nutrients that need to be cut out. And in terms of your microbiome, rather than a conventional diet that restricts and will naturally then reduce the diversity of your microbiome, which is not a good thing, the fasting actually encourages a specific type of bacteria which is beneficial for weight loss, and you don't get that drop in diversity of your microbiome. It's a great method, and some people choose it as a lifetime option, a lifestyle, and other people it can just be a short-term kickstart, and as you say, to be more mindful about what they are eating. So when you only have around 600 to 800 calories on your fast days, you're going to really think and plan about what you're eating. And then on the plenty days, if you have thought about calculated your energy expenditure and seen what that looks like in terms of a day's food, again, it's all about being mindful and planning and being organised about what you're eating. That really helps.
But then it's also not about having to completely ditch the idea of going out with friends or enjoying a celebration. That's one of the things that really worked for me about it. The mindfulness has helped me think, okay, if I have got something planned for the weekend, that doesn't mean I'm completely ditching my diet and going back to square one. So it really cuts out a lot of the guilt.
Yes, absolutely. Weekends, social occasions are a lot easier, and it means that when you do eat out or go for a family celebration or whatever and have those kind of foods, you don't feel that you've totally broken the rules of a diet, fall off the wagon. You just keep on going with your next fast day.
We've come up to R now, which is for restoring the microbiome, and we talked a little bit about a microbiome is that collection of microbes that are existing in the body at different places, and particularly we're interested in the gut microbiome because the more we see, the more we realise how important it is in our body's functions. Another tie back to the dirty diet idea, because we used to perceive germs as being dangerous under all circumstances, and now we're realising that so much of our health is affected by and will change depending on what's going on within the gut microbiome. Give us an overview of the kind of areas that it can affect.
So there's lots of promising research around the microbiome, which is just coming out all the time. It's a really exciting area. Some of the research is in its infancy. There's lots that's been done on just in mouse studies. One of the frustrations actually that I found within the NHS is that this often isn't carried through to advice that links in with other advice that we know is true. So rather than just ignoring it, to embrace it, and if it's within the framework of healthy eating, then to recommend this to clients. So the research is pointing towards improved mental health, so reduced anxiety and depression. It's pointing towards reduced, if someone has a susceptibility to dementia or Alzheimer's, then reducing the likelihood of this happening. Also, improvements in response to some cancer treatments. A lot of evidence is around reducing inflammation in the gut. So then that is then linked to metabolic diseases such as diabetes and blood sugar control, obesity, of course, and raised cholesterol. So improving your microbiome can improve all of those parameters. So there's the mental health, metabolic disease, and inflammatory bowel disease. So ulcerative colitis, autoimmune diseases also, and that is then linked within the reduced inflammation within the gut.
When you look at it as a whole body level, there are so many different systems that are affected by the health of the microbiome or that affect it. And that's the thing, we're not totally sure at the moment in terms of cause and effect. We don't know how much of the changes that we might see in the microbiome are caused by the ill health or a condition itself, or are actually causing it. But it certainly makes sense in the meantime, and this is what we're doing in the book, to add certain things into your diet that maximize the chances of a balanced and diverse microbiome. We've talked about diversity at the beginning, and you were expressing how, fiber and vegetables and that group of foods is really good. We're also looking at adding some of those microbes back in. We will talk about that in a bit more depth, but there are foods that you can do that with.
Absolutely. So probiotics are the foods that enhance your microbiome. So they increase the populations of healthy bacteria and confer a health benefit. That is the definition. And so the most widely studied are the lactobacillus and bifidobacterium. So live yogurt, fermented milk, kefir, and then the commercial probiotics as well. So there's the Yakult and Actimels and various sachets that you can take, different strains of probiotic in there. Other fermented foods are sauerkraut, kimchi, but of course to get the benefits, these need to be unpasteurized. So ideally made at home, not bought off a supermarket shelf in a jar. Although you will get the fiber, and that will be beneficial in itself, but to get the microbes, they need to be nicely fermenting.
We will talk quite a lot in a separate podcast about some of the details of how to do that. So just going forward to the last couple of letters, we've got T, which is for training yourself in healthier habits, particularly having a look at some of the countries which have healthy lifestyles. So we're looking at countries where people live longer lives often, and often a better quality of life, so they have better health into old age. And you have traveled a lot, and you've got family members who adopt some of these healthy regimes. What are the kind of things we're looking at doing to train ourselves out of the bad habits into good habits for good long-term health?
So food culture is really important. Unfortunately, within the Western world, in the UK and perhaps in America, we've lost touch with our food culture slightly. So for instance, to socialise, we might go to the pub for a few drinks, whereas in Europe, they'll go out and grab some food and go to a cafe. In England, we wouldn't think anything of eating meals on our own or in front of the TV, rather than that as a nice family group, or taking time out in a lunch hour and going and sitting down in a cafe. And so I think that's really important. And there are so many things within food culture in many countries, such as intermittent fasting and with fermented foods, that we now understand as being very beneficial to health. So for instance, my husband's family are Indian, and his grandmother always used to fast on a Monday. This wasn't calorie controlled. She didn't calculate her total daily energy expenditure. But on a Monday, she would eat very plain food and not too much of it, just enough to get by. And that made her appreciate the food that she was eating and feel grateful for her food. And it's just on that weekly basis to have that refocus on food and not overeating. My husband's grandfather is up until very recently was making his own yogurts every day, and so all of those, now we know all of those lovely live bacteria in it, and we think of this as something new and a trendy thing that foodies are doing in their kitchens, whereas in actual fact this has been going on for years and years. My mother's family are Czech, and her mother would always make kefir, and it was something that they would look forward to drinking a nice yogurt drink when they got home from school, and huge batches of sauerkraut to see them through the winter, that they would then always have vegetables there. So as these traditions sort of get overtaken by modern culture and fast foods, we're losing all of those lovely healthy bacteria. This mystery of the global obesity epidemic is slowly becoming more clear as to why it's such a problem now when it hasn't been in the past and people were eating similar quantities of food.
So we can really learn, I think, and that's one of the points we're making with the retraining and the training, that we can look at those things, and often when you begin to read about them and then you see some of the other aspects of diet that we're recommending, it becomes quite intuitive, and it seems like, yes, that is how we used to do it before our heads got a bit messed up and a bit confused by all of this contradictory advice. The final one then is the why, and that's for you, and that is because no diet really fits all. Obviously, you know that because you're working with individual clients, but not everybody is able to access that. So in this part of it, we're really encouraging people to be aware of energy needs, likes or dislikes, and even your lifestyle. So can you give us a quick overview on that as well, on the importance of a diet responding to you as an individual?
I guess as it stands, a degree of this is within trial and error. So with it in the future, there's a very exciting field of nutrigenomics, which means you can look at your DNA and it will tell you how you respond, your body, and responds to certain foods. And so, for instance, some people are more sensitive to carbohydrates and need to be more careful about the amount of carbohydrates and sugars that they put into their body, that other people can eat not have the same effect on their blood sugars. So with fats, some people can eat a certain amount of fat and malabsorb it, and other people are not quite so lucky, and it's all down to genetics. But until we're at that point where you can just have your DNA tested and it will work through an algorithm and prescribe your perfect diet, there is a degree of trial and error. You need to, as you say, look at your lifestyle, your build, how much you weigh, how much exercise you're doing, and tailor your diet towards that.
I mean, certainly we are told a lot of the time that we have average calorie requirements. And I've discovered to my cost as I've got older that I need less energy. And even once somebody loses a significant amount of weight, in my case, I lost about 2 stone, so that's 7 kilos or so, you then have to, if you want to eat the same amount that you were before, up your energy, need by being more active, for example, or building more muscle. And yet a lot of people stick to what the guidelines are, which is, say, 2,000 calories for an adult woman. Well, if I were eating that all the time, gradually my weight would creep up because I'm 50 now.
Absolutely. There's a huge variation, and it's very difficult, of course, for the government to be able to give guidance. And I think it's good that there is guidance, but you do need to appreciate that this needs to be tailored. And it depends on your past weight history as well. And so if your weight has gone up and down, unfortunately, your body does become accustomed to less calories. And as I mentioned earlier, one of the focuses then is on increasing your metabolism and increasing the amount of calories that your body is burning.
And part of it as well is that awareness. And that's one of the things that we do encourage with the Dirty Diet, is that you really take a bit of time to take stock of your needs, your requirements, so that when you do it, you're not doing it to extremes, and you are recognizing the things that you love as well to eat, but you're also not shooting yourself in the foot by accidentally doing something that isn't appropriate for you as an individual. We're going to wrap this up now for this one, but quickly, so we did together set up a little group of people who were trying out the Dirty Diet for 4 weeks, and they had some great results. It wasn't just about weight loss, although there was some really good weight loss there, but they also felt a lot better, didn't they?
They had increased mood. They had an improvement in their gastro symptoms. So, for instance, people were feeling less bloated. I always make sure with my clients that there is this before and after survey of the wider symptoms of what can be affected by diet, how frequently you're getting colds, how well you're sleeping at night, that people don't necessarily notice if they don't record it. And when you make improvements, it does benefit all of these other areas, which is, of course, I would say, more important than the weight loss itself. And so I do encourage people to focus on health gains instead of weight loss.
It's a great way of looking at it.
Great. Well, we will leave that there, but in the future podcast, we're going to go into a little bit more detail about some of those things. And for now, thank you very much, Helen.
Thank you for having me.
I hope you enjoyed the interview. There is so much to build on there. I did think I would explain a little bit about why I seem to have it in for clean eating quite so much, because actually there are aspects of clean eating or of the advice that are given that I don't completely disagree with. I think that eating more fresh produce, more fresh fruit and vegetables is something that we should all be doing. And as a vegetarian for the last 30 years, a lot of the ingredients as they're suggesting, whether it's quinoa or whether it's different grains, are things that I enjoy in my diet as well. I have also loved avocados since I was in my teens. They are something that I've always had loads of. Maybe it's why I've got quite unlined skin. I've just celebrated my 50th birthday and actually I'm still looking all right on the wrinkles front. I think that avocados are full of really good fats that can also help fill us up. So I don't disapprove of a lot of the recipes that are suggested, but what I do disapprove of is the narrowness and the lack of science in some of the ideas that the clean eaters are suggesting. I hate the idea of this orthorexia, and I especially don't like the way that it's suggested that this narrowing of our diets can lead automatically to glowy skin and lots more energy, because in a lot of cases, the people who are suggesting this are already gorgeous and they're in their 20s. It's no wonder they glow, to be honest. What we need to be thinking about is a lifelong health gain, and that's where Helen and I really agree on here. Certainly, there are some people who do have to avoid things like gluten. If you are celiac, gluten is very harmful to your body. But for most of us, cutting out gluten, for example, altogether, then cuts out a range of other foods and ingredients and breads and things like that, which really our diet is going to be all the poorer from them. We're going to be hearing later in the season from an amazing baker who's found ways around her own gluten sensitivity and her wheat sensitivity, and she's found a way of baking that she can still enjoy toast, pastry, and even croissants, which she makes using her own sourdough starter. So it's really worth listening to that. That'll be podcast 3 in the series. I think that's it for now from me. Keep listening. The next episode is going to be Helen and I talking about why cheese is as much of a superfood as a goji berry. So that's one to look forward to. I really enjoyed recording that one. Don't forget, you can also sign up via the link in the show notes to get your free Dirty Diet blueprint. The book is out very soon, and the blueprint includes a way to personalise your diet and to recognise your own goals, and also a couple of my favourite recipes for free. They include the chocolate cherry granola, which never lasts very long in our house, and also the blue cheese and potato puff bake. That's one that I really enjoy for a winter day, but also it's great in the spring. That's it for today's Live Happy, Eat Dirty. For free tools and tips to help you live a gloriously imperfect way of life, go to thedirty-diet.com or find us on Facebook/The Dirty Diet. You can also tweet me at Kate Writes Books. And do have a happy and dirty day.